We begin today's shiur 8 lines from the top of Daf Tes Zayin at the Mishnah. Shvua lo ochaloch, ha shvua she'ochaloch, lo shvua lo ochaloch, Ozer. We have 3 expressions of oaths, and the result of any of these expressions is that there is restriction. In other words, this oath takes hold. Michlal, we see from here that the expression Daha Shvua She'ochaloch equals Delo Achilna Mashma. It conveys the idea that a person is swearing that he will not eat. As the Mishnah concluded, Ozer, it is forbidden for him to eat. Ve'rominu, and we raise now a problem, a contradiction, from another Tanaic source, and the question lasts a couple of lines, as you can see how we've noted it with the long question. Shvuos shtayim shein arba. This is a quote from a Mishnah in Masechet Shvuos, which indicates that there are 2 basic shvuos that the Torah makes reference to, and from them we derive another 2 for a total of 4 types of vows. We're deliberately not getting into the details of what that means, what that implies, but what we see is as follows. She'ochal v'shelo ochal. These are 2 in the future tense. That's what you can see. The Mishnah said shtayim. And she'ochalti v'shelo ochalti, another 2 in the past tense. He swears that the 2 future tense, that either he will eat something or will not eat something, or that he has already eaten something or will not eat something. Midiko'omar she'ochal v'shelo ochal, she'ochalti v'shelo ochalti, from the fact that we present the shvuos in the positive and in the negative, michlal de she'ochal loch, that's a shvua in the positive form, and notice the dashed underline is just like we saw above. And yet the conclusion of she'ochal loch is the achilno masha, that I will eat. Now compare the 2 texts. Our Mishnah used the expression shvua she'ochal loch, and the result was delo achilno. Here, the same language, she'ochal loch, and the result is the achilno in the positive. That's the question. Notice a house shape on the side of the Gemara. You can see under the nosei mivneh heading Deos liyashev. The house introduces opinions to resolve the stira, the contradiction ben mashmois ha shvua she'ochaloch. Is it the achilna? Is it in the positive that I will eat? Oh, the lo achilna, or that I swear not to eat. So answer number 1. Note that it lasts a couple of lines. Omar Abaye. She'ochal shtei lishonos mashma. In fact, the expression she'ochal implies both, and it all depends on the circumstances. Person was being subjected to pressure. Misarvin means they were imploring upon him to eat with them. V'omar, and the fellow responded, okay, achilno, I'll eat, v'su shvua she'ochal. And then he adds, and I swear I'll eat. The achilno mashma. That implies, that conveys his desire to eat with them. In other words, he's swearing that he will eat with them. Avol, Omar, if what preceded the shvua statement was lo achilno, I'm not going to eat with you, v'suamar shvua she'ochal. And then he adds that, the same words, but in the context, the lo achilno ka'omar. What he's really saying is, he swears, saying that, do you think I'm going to eat with you? Meaning, I'm not going to eat with you. Rav Ashi Omar, she'ochal dishvua, the word that we saw together with the oath of shvua that we saw in our Mishnah, was really she'i ochal ka'omar. We look at the Rashi just across from here, a little bit up. Rav Ashi Omer ha dekotoni ha shvua she'ochal. That namely in our Mishnah, She'i oichel kotoni. What the Mishnah is really teaching is she'i ochal. Lachi osur de lo achilnahu. The word she'i is a negation. I will not eat. Im kain, the Gemara asks, well, if that's what our Mishnah is saying, then pshita ma'ila meimro, then it's obvious. Why do you have to teach such a thing? Everyone knows that she'i ochal means I will not eat. The Gemara answers, Mahu detema. I would have thought without the Mishnah, Mekam lishnahu de iskale, that in saying she'i ochal, it's a type of, we'll say a speech deficiency that overcame him, and that his tongue got stuck, and that he really was trying to say she'ochal. And if that's what he was really trying to say, so she'i ochal, if that's what came out, it doesn't mean that he is not going to eat. So once again, without the Mishnah, I would have thought that when you hear if you hear someone saying she'i ochal, he's really trying to say that I will eat. Chamash malon, no, you don't have to suspect that his tongue got stuck. And if he says she'i ochal, and then he's saying, I will not eat. Abaye lo omar tam de Rav Ashi. Abaye didn't explain the way Rav Ashi did, the lo kotoni she'i ochal. The text of the Mishnah doesn't read that. It doesn't have that word she'i. That's what Rav Ashi's interpretation of the Mishnah is. But it doesn't say that. So Abaye didn't accept or doesn't adopt Rav Ashi's explanation. Rav Ashi nodi min tam d'Abaye. Rav Ashi avoided, nodi literally is to drift away from, to distance himself from the explanation of Abaye. Kosovar shelo ochal nami mashma shtei lishonos. If you're going to accept Abaye's reasoning that interpretation is dependent on context, well then shelo ochal could also be interpreted that way. And as follows: Hoyu misarvin bo le'echol. They were pressuring someone to eat. V'yomar, and he says, Lo achilna, lo alichina, I'm not going to eat. V'yomar nami shvua, and then he adds to that, Bein sha'ochal, bein shalo ochal, whether it's his shvua is in the positive phrasing or the negative. Hodein achilno mashma di omar. In that context, whether he says she'ochal or shelo ochal, what he is trying to say to them is, I will eat with you. In order to appreciate this stage, we look at the Rashi. Rashi v'Rav Ashi havi nodud v'sur mitaymei de Abaye. He distanced himself from Abaye's approach. Dechi hoyu misarvin b'loichel. If you have a situation where they're pressuring someone to eat v'omar, and he says lo achilna, v'su omar shvua beinim omar shvua she'ochal beinim omar shvua shelo ochal, mashmanami dikomar achilna. Either one can be interpreted as meaning he swears he's going to eat. Im omar shvua she'ochal, mashma diko omar achilna. It implies that he is saying that I will eat. Dahachi komar. Thusly, he was saying up till this point, bitmiha, with a tone of wonderment. Lo achilna, shua shocha bevadai. He was saying, I'm not going to eat with you. I'm not going to eat. I swear I will eat with you for sure. V'im omar shvua shelo ochal hodein mashmanami da'achilna. That also implies I will eat. The mashma. Lo achilna, shvua, I lo achilna, v'hainu chado lishna. Following from the tone of the negation of the lo achilna that preceded the shvua, He's saying, well, do you think I'm not going to eat with you? And he swears, do you really think I'm not going to eat with you? Which, of course, implies that he's swearing to eat with them. That is how shelo ochal could actually mean the positive, just like she'ochal. Now, the Gemara goes on, V'ika litrutzi nami lishna shvua shelo ochal shvua delo achilno komar. And you can explain the expression shvua delo achilno also in the negative, as the simple rendering would in fact be. So that if you're going to accept Abaye's approach, there really turns out there's nothing definitive in either expression of shvua she'ochal or shvua shelo ochal. Elotana paska. The Tana, when he teaches things in a definitive fashion. She'ochal means the achil no mashma, and shelo ochal means the lo ochel mashma. We'll take a look at the Rosh commentary, who explains along the same lines why Rav Ashi did not accept Abaye's explanation. The Rosh, on the first of the widest lines on the lower part of the page, Rav Ashi nodi mitame d'Abaye, he distanced himself from Abaye's approach, dim Isa, the masnisin Isa, the fish, the yesh shvua she'ochal mashma shelo ochal. If it were so that our Mishnah, in saying shvua she'ochal, has the implication of the negation of shelo ochal, ula fuke mimasnisin de shvuas, and to the exclusion of the Mishnah in Shvuas Tikatoni Dechol Shvua She'ochal Mashmo Davka She'ochal, and the point of our Mishnah is to, we'll say, negate in a certain way, to negate the Mishnah in Shvuas, that when you see or when you hear Shvua She'ochal, it means only in the positive. Im Kain, if that approach to our Mishnah is to be taken as Abaye suggests, Kishelo Ochal Nami Have Leila Forish Hachi. The lo ochal part of our Mishnah, the first expression in the Mishnah, should also have been explained that way. The Omar, if they were pressuring him to eat, and he says, Lo achil no bitmiha, with the tone of wonderment, Klomar v'chiato sovur shlo ochal imoch, do you think I'm not going to eat with you? Bevadai ochal. V'su amar shvua shelo ochaloch. And he adds, after saying, of course I'm going to eat with you, and he says, I swear that I'm not going to eat with you. Dachil komar. What he's really saying is that I will eat with you. Ulekayim dvarov ma she'omar lo achilna bitmiha unishba. And to fulfill the words that he said in the negative, but in a tone of wonderment, thusly he is swearing. Now, Abaye didn't spell all that out. He didn't offer that explanation for the beginning of the Mishnah. Apparently, Abaye will tell you that the beginning of the Mishnah is Dafka, that when you say Shavua lo ochalach, when the Tana says such a thing, he means only in the negative. And likewise, when you see that expression in the positive, it means only in the positive. And therefore, Rav Ashi tells you, my explanation is to be accepted, that when our Mishnah says Shvua she'ochal, and the result is Ozer, what the fellow is really saying is she'i ochal. And the Chiddush was that don't think that his pronouncing she'i ochal is just a function of his tongue getting stuck, and he wanted to really say it in the positive. Not so. If someone enunciates she'i ochal, he means just that he is not going to eat. The conclusion of the Gemara, once again, is as we read already. The Tana Pascha, the Tana teaches things in definitive terms. When you see she'ochal, it means only in the positive. And when you see shelo ochal, it means only in the negative. The Mishnah. Zeh chomer b'shvuas mi b'nedarim. this, meaning that which we've learned till now, represents a stringency in the realm of shvuos, the realm of oaths over nedarim, over vows. Now the thinking right now is that which we said before of shvua shelo ochal, that in shvuos that would take hold, and in nedarim it wouldn't take hold. That's the thinking right now. Namely, that which we saw in our previous Mishnah. V'chomer b'nedarim mi b'shvuos ketzad. What is the stringency of nedarim over shvuos? Omar koinam sukkah shani oise lulav shani noitel tefillin shani meniach. The expression konam, as we've seen in the past, is a reference to a vow. It's a kinui of the word korban. So in b'nedarim Ozer, b'shvuos muter. A lashon of konam or a lashon of neder, which would result in his non-performance of a mitzvah, will be binding. But not so if he vows not to fulfill a mitzvah. If he swears, if he takes an oath, he's nishba to violate or to not fulfill a mitzvah, that shvuah does not take hold. We continue at the top of Omid Beis. Chomer, the expression that we saw in the opening of the Mishnah, namely Zeh Chomer b'shvuos mi nedarim, implies, Chomer means a stringency. That B is more than A. Well, Michlal di neder, who? That if a person would say, instead of shvuah lo ochal, he would say korban lo ochaloch, there is a neder. It's not as stringent as such as a shvuah, but something is there. That's what the word chomer implies. Yeah, but v'hamuter katani, back at the end of Tes Vav Amud Beis, if a person said lo ochaloch in a neder form, we learned that it's mutter, that it doesn't take hold. You can, if you have access to Tes Vav Amud Beis, you can look back at the bottom line, ha korban she'ochaloch, or lo korban lo ochaloch, mutter, there is no vow. So the question is, the opening of our current Mishnah, which says there's a chumrah of shvuos over nedarim, what is that a reference to? So obviously it's not a reference to the issue of ochaloch or shvuah lo ochaloch. The Gemara answers, I'll tell you what, it's a reference to something else. Aseifa de idach bava katani. It's a reference to the end of the other section. The Mishnah had taught back on Daf Yud Dalid Omid Beis, Koinim she'ani yoshen. The Mishnah there had concluded that if you hear a vowel like that, Koinim she'ani yoshen, hareze below yachel dvaro. And Ravina, back on the Daf Yud Dalid Omid Beis, had explained regarding that situation. I should just say, technically speaking, Ravina appeared later than that, but referring to that Mishnah on Yud Dalid Omid Beis, Ravina said that Hareze Bebal Yachel means midrabanan, on a rabbinic level. So, in light of that, the Mishnah here that says there's a chumrah by shvuos over nedarim is a reference to that which was taught on Tes Vav Amud Beis, shvuah she'eni yoshen. Notice, on Yud Daled Amud Beis, the Mishnah spoke about konam shani yoshen, and the Mishnah on Tes Vav Amud Beis speaks about a shvuah she'eni yoshen, as the Gemara quotes here. So it's a reference to the seifa of the earlier section that said Shvua Sheni Yoshen Sheni Medaber Sheni Mahalech Ozer. And regarding Shavua Sheni Yoshen, it's the sleeping is prohibited on a Torah level. Zeh chomer b'shvuas mi b'nedarim. Regarding the issue of sleeping, if one were to say koinem shani yoshen, a vow against making his sleep like a korban, meaning that his sleep is usher, so that type of vow would have, when one sleeps, he would be in violation of a rabbinic prohibition. Whereas a shvua, a vow not to sleep, that vow has a doraisa strength to it, a Torah level strength to it, and hence he has violated by his sleeping or by taking such a vow. He has taking such an oath. He is involved with a Torah level violation. Chomer b'nedara mi b'shvuas ketzad. Rav Kahana Masni Omer Rav Gidol Omer Rav. Rav Kahana's version is to teach the following, which we haven't learned yet, in the name of Rav. And Rav Yomi Masni Omer Rav Gidol Omer Shmuel. And Rav Yomi's version of teaching the following is to be taught in the name of Shmuel. And what is the topic to be taught? It's featured on the side under our Nosei heading as well, and we've written on the side Minayin Shenishboin Lavor ala Mitzvahs Klomar Hashvua lo Chola. From where do we see that a shvua, an oath not to fulfill a mitzvah, doesn't get off the ground? So now we see this discussed in the Gemara. Minayin Shenishboin Lavor ala Mitzvahs. From where do we know that we don't swear, meaning an oath to violate a mitzvah in the Torah is not an oath? Talmud Lomar, lo yachel devoroi. Devoro lo yachel, avol mechel hu lechepsei shemayim. The Torah tells us you shall not violate your words. But when it comes to the words of heaven, meaning commandments of God, and you swear otherwise, there you have to violate your words in favor of the chepsei shemayim, the desire of heaven. Let us take a look at the Rashi. Avol mechal hu lechepsei shemayim, she'im nodar lavor al achas min ha-mitzvahs, ein shvua chola olav. If a person had sworn not to fulfill one of the mitzvahs, the shvua does not take hold. Umechal yoyse shvua, and he violates whatever he had said. The mushma v'yoymeid hu lekaimo. He is obligated to fulfill the mitzvahs. Ve'ein shvua chola olav. And once there is an oath, a second oath cannot take hold. V'yochol lechalel dvaro, and therefore he can violate his shvua. You'll notice that we have a bracketed section. The purpose of these brackets is to create a sense of continuity with regard to issues concerning source of the idea. Ein ishboin lavor ala mitzvahs. We don't swear, that swearing to violate mitzvahs doesn't take hold. So if you skip the brackets momentarily, you'll notice that up till now we asked, from where do you know that ein ishboin lavor ala mitzvahs? So we cited the pasuk lo yachel devoro and the inference. However, after the brackets, 4 lines from the bottom, the Gemara asks, "V'she'ein nishboin lavor la mitzvahs mehocha nafkalei mehosam nafkalei." Are you saying that the source for ein nishboin is learned from lo yachel dvoro? As you can see, the arrow points back to the earlier arrow. Rather, the Gemara says, mehosam nafkalei. There's an alternative source, the Sanyo, and the Gemara goes on to bring a Tanaic source, which cites a pasuk indicating a second source. And the Gemara will deal with that seeming problem of what really is the source of ein nishboin lav al mitzvahs. But until that point, we go back to the bracketed section. The Gemara asks, up till now, we've pointed out that in the realm of Shavuos, a shvut levatelus a mitzvah doesn't get off the ground, but a neder levatelus a mitzvah does take effect. The Gemara asks regarding that distinction. My shno neder. What is different about a neder that we say a person who vows against the mitzvah, the vow takes hold. Ichtiv, ish ki dor neder lashem lo yachel devoro. And the way that's interpreted is that when a person makes a neder, even if it's lashem, meaning even if it's against a teaching of God, you have to keep to your vow, which means that the vow takes hold. Shvua nami haksiv, regarding shvuas, it says in the same pasuk, O hishava shvua lashem lo yachel devoro. So the same, terminology is used regarding shvuas, meaning a shvua that you make against Hashem, you shall not violate your shvua. The shvua should take hold. Omar Abaye. We've highlighted the names with diamonds, Abaye and Rava. Abaye says, it depends. It says, Ha di Omar hanoas sukkah olai, Ha di Omar shvua shelo ehene min hasukkah. Abaye says, the distinction is as follows. With regard to oaths, the person is saying that he's forbidding the benefit that he gets from the sukkah, the pleasure he gets from the sukkah. He forbids himself to receive that benefit. With regard to shvuas, he says he swears not to benefit from the sukkah. To appreciate what Abaye is trying to teach us, we'll look at the Rashi, and we might look at the Ran as well. First, the Rashi. Amar Abaye, Hodemar Hanoa Sukolai, Hodemar Shvuah Shlo Enim Nasuka, Klomar. Hodikotoni Masnisin Shenoijrim Ala Mitzvahs, that which our Mishnah teaches that a neder against mitzvahs takes hold, Kigon de Omar, Hanoa Sukolai. Dahashta Koser Cheftzalei, he is banning a benefit from the from the sukkah entity, from the physical sukkah, from the sukkah object. Such a neder takes hold without any question. We saw this earlier, that even though a man is obligated to provide intimacy relations with his wife, for his wife, a vow which features his banning himself from deriving pleasure from the intimacy takes hold. She'eno oser atzmo oleha. He is not forbidding himself from being with her. He's not prohibiting himself from being with her. He's obligated to be with her. Elo ladida oser olav. But rather, what he is doing, he is forbidding himself from benefiting from her. The Kosover Abai, the Choloshon Shvua, Lo Motzinu de Techololei. Abai, though, holds that when it comes to the Shvua expressed in those terms, doesn't get off the ground. The Omar Shvua Hanoa Sukolai, the Hanoasa Oisrolov, the Havade Lo Hav Yeshvua. If someone were to say Shvua Hanoa Sukolai, that's not a Shvua, that's a neder. That's once again, the focus is on the object that you're prohibiting upon yourself. The Kevadamor Alai, Hainu Neder. Once you say upon me, that is a neder formulation. The Cholhecha de Komar Alai, Amrinon Hainu Neder, V'chayav Machriuso. The neder who? Kiyamar Hachi Afilu Chatchila, Motzi Nodar, because the Cheftzolei. As we've said before, that formulating it in those terms, you're asering, you're prohibiting the object upon yourself. Avol shvua lo motzi lukmi elokigon de'omar shvua shelo ene chaygavna lo chayel olei de lo motzi lemeiser nafshe olei de mitzvah ki ka'omar shelo ene de oiser atzmo b'mitzvah shu meshubed lo. When you say that you swear not to benefit from the mitzvah, you can't do that because you're pre-bound to fulfill the mitzvah. And it's in this vein that we see a stringency of Nedarim over Shvuas. That in the case of Nedarim, he would be saying it, you're banning yourself from benefiting from the sukkah, and that works, that takes hold. But Shvua Shelo, where you are saying that you will not experience pleasure from the mitzvah of sukkah, that you can't do because you're pre-bound to fulfill the mitzvah. Now, as we've seen in the past, if you want to present this in the simple, basic terms, when it comes to Nedarim, you are banning the sukkah from yourself. The focus is on the object of the sukkah, and in the shvua, you are focusing on yourself, that you as a person will not benefit from the sukkah, and since the focus is on the person, and the person is pre-bound, so it doesn't get off the ground. We see in the Ran as well, we take a look at the Ran, Klomar Svorahu De Lashem Lokoi Ashvua Ela Achi Idor Neder. In the psukim that the Gemara had cited in its question, the expression of Lashem, which we mistakenly should have read, which we didn't, the pasuk, it's featured on the side of the Gemara above. So if you look on the side of our marked Gemara, you see Bamidbar Perek Lamed Pasuk Gimel. The pasuk says, "Ish ki idor neder Lashem o yishavash shvua leasor yisor al nafsho lo yachel devoro kechol hayotz mipiv yaseh." The word Lashem, you see, comes after ki idor neder Lashem, and the Ran is pointing out that Lashem, which implied that the vow takes hold, even if it's concerning matters that are Lashem, even mitzvahs, well, that Lashem reference is not going on the shvua, ela ki idor neder. It's going only on the neder. Mishum de neder bedinu shiyochul al davar mitzvah lefishu Ozer al atzmo hano asukah shalosh neder kachu v'ein machilin es odom davar Ozer lo. In the neder formulation, the speaker is banning the sukkah, the item from upon himself. And we don't feed someone something that is prohibited to him. Avoloshin shvua hainu shelo eishev besukah v'lo kol imenu lafkias mitzvah sukkah shu mitzuva bo. But the loshin of shvua is, I will not sit in the sukkah. And that language doesn't get off the ground, because you are pre-obligated to fulfill the mitzvah of sukkah. The Gemara continues. Omar Rava v'chi mitzvahs lehenos nitnu. Describing the fulfillment of the mitzvah as a source of pleasure is something that is false a priori. Namely, mitzvahs are not designed to be a source of pleasure. There's we'll say the spiritual pleasure that one gets in knowing that he's fulfilled a mitzvah, but that's not what the mitzvah is designed for. The mitzvah is designed for you to be fulfilling the will of God. We look at the Ran, Omar Rava v'chi mitzvahs lehenes nitnu. Rava lav atayme dabaye makshe, devadei shapir k'omar, elo alishnei. Rava is not challenging the explanation of Abaye, but he's questioning the language. The Omar Hanoa Sukalai, if a person were to say that Yoshev Ba Yeshiva Shel Mitzvah, he would be able to sit in the sukkah anyway to fulfill the mitzvah. The mitzvah is lav lehenes nitnu. So that as far as the explanation of Abaye, which the Ran explained just before, that there's a difference between a neder and a shvua, and that the neder is where the object is being prohibited upon himself. That is something a person can do, but a person cannot extricate himself from mitzvah fulfillment because the person himself is pre-obligated. Fine, that distinction exists. but to phrase it as Hanua Sukkah Alai, that Rava feels is simply inaccurate. We also take a look at the Rosh commentary. Omar Rava v'chi mitzvahs lehenes nitnu kashilei l'Rava amashi iskra by Hanua b'dvorov. Like the Ran said, it bothers Rava. Why did Abaye mention the concept of Hano in his presentation? Mishum de mitzvahs lav lehenes nitnu. Mitzvahs are not given to us to have pleasure from them. V'im omar Hanoah sukkah alai lo nesra olav. We're looking for an example of a neder that takes effect in the context of mitzvahs. The neder wouldn't take effect in a case like that. In other words, he would be able to sit in the sukkah if he said it that way. The lo mikri hano mashu mekayim mitzvahs hamokim. It's not called hano, that which you fulfill the will of Hashem. We continue in the Gemara. Elo amar Rava, ha de amar yeshivas sukkah alai, v'ha de amar shvua shelo eshev basukah. So as we explained before, Rava essentially says the same concept, that if a person says yeshiva sukkah alai, the sitting in this sukkah is Ozer unto me, the sukkah is not bound to the individual, so the neder will take hold, and that man, that person shall not sit in the sukkah. However, if he says shvua shelo eshev basukah, he swears that I will not fulfill the mitzvah of sukkah. Not that the sukkah is Ozer unto me, but I will not fulfill the mitzvah of sukkah. That doesn't get off the ground, because he is previously bound from the time of the Torah giving to fulfill the mitzvah. And as we said before, he's mushba v'yoymei mahar Sinai, and ein shvua chalal shvua. A second shvua, in this case the one that you're making, cannot set in when there's already a previous shvua, and in this case to fulfill the mitzvah. The Gemara asks, is it true that a shvua does not take hold when it comes to mitzvahs? Is that really learned from Lo Yachel Devoro? It's learned from another source, the Sanya. Could it be that if a person swears not to fulfill a mitzvah, to mevatel a mitzvah, and he doesn't mevatel the mitzvah, and he does the mitzvah, is he going to be guilty of having violated a shvua? Will he be chayav a korban shvua? For violation of shvuas, a korban, a sacrifice, needs to be brought. In this case, will he need to bring a sacrifice after having sworn not to fulfill a specific mitzvah, and he goes in and fulfills it? Will he need to bring a sacrifice? The Gemara continues at the top of Yud Zayin Amud Aleph. Talmud Loimar, the pasuk says, Lehora o lehetiv. This is a pasuk that you find in the context of the korban of shvuas, where and we learn from here, Maha Tova Rishus, just like doing something beneficial is a matter of rishus. For example, he swears to eat something, so that's something that gives him pleasure. That's something that's also optional, to eat the piece of bread or not. Af hara rishus. So too the hara, the negation, let's say not to do something, only if it applies to a matter of rishus, matter of something optional. Yotza, to the exclusion of nishba levatel es mitzvah v'lo bitel she'eino rishus biyado, to the exclusion of someone who swears to violate a mitzvah and ends up not violating the mitzvah. That's not something that was in your hands, that was something that was discretionary in the first place. So the problem right now is we have two sources for the same idea. What are we to do with that? Answer: Chad kro lemifteri mi korban shvua, v'chad lemifteri min lav d'shvua. In violating oaths, there are two outcomes. There is the need to bring a sacrifice, and there is the need where there is the violation of a negative command. It may be pointed out that in general, negative commands could result in lashing when one violates something knowingly. What we're telling you here is that when it comes to oaths concerning mitzvah violation, there is no korban whatsoever to speak of, nor is there any negative or violation of negative command to speak of either. With that, we conclude our shiur for today.